I never thought my first day moving into a new home would end with police lights flashing across my driveway. But then again, I never expected to meet her. The house was everything my wife and I had worked for over the past decade. A clean, modern two-story in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside the city. Fresh paint, trimmed hedges, wide sidewalks, exactly the kind of place you imagine kids riding bikes and neighbors waving politely. We closed on the house legally. Mortgage approved, title transferred, keys in my hand. Everything was official, or so I thought. It was early afternoon when the moving truck pulled up. Cardboard boxes stacked high, movers stepping out. The sun was bright, the sky clear. I remember smiling, thinking, finally, we made it. That smile didn't last long. I was in the driveway directing the movers when I noticed a white SUV roll to a slow stop right in front of my house. The engine idled, the driver's window lowered. That's when I heard the voice. Sharp, cold, commanding. "Excuse me." I turned. A middle-aged woman sat behind the wheel. Short blonde hair pulled tight, oversized sunglasses, arms crossed like she already hated me. "Yes?" I said, still polite. She took off her sunglasses slowly and stared at me like I'd parked on her lawn. "Who gave you permission to move in here?" I actually laughed a little. I thought she was joking. "I bought the house," I said. "We're unloading." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "No," she said, "you didn't." The movers froze. One of them glanced at me like, "Is this real?" "I'm sorry," I said. She stepped out of the SUV, slammed the door shut, and marched up my driveway like she owned it. "I'm the HOA president," she announced, "and no one moves into this community without my approval." I felt the first spark of disbelief. "I went through escrow," I said calmly. "Everything's finalized." She waved her hand dismissively. "That doesn't matter," she snapped. "You need to submit your move-in request, background check, and HOA interview. Until then, you are not authorized to occupy this property." I stared at her. "Ma'am, I already own the house." Her eyes narrowed. "You're not listening," she said slowly like I was stupid. "The HOA owns this neighborhood." That was the moment my stomach dropped, because I realized this wasn't confusion. This was entitlement. I took a breath. "Can you show me where it says that?" I asked. She smirked. "You don't need to see it. I am the authority here." One of the movers cleared his throat. "Sir, should we keep unloading?" Before I could answer, she spun toward him. "No," she barked. "Put those boxes back on the truck immediately." Now my patience was thinning. "You can't talk to them like that," I said. She snapped her head back toward me. "Watch your tone," she warned. "You're already starting off on the wrong foot." I felt anger rising, but I kept control. "Look," I said, "if you have a problem, you can take it up with my realtor or the HOA management company." Her smile vanished. "I am the HOA management," she said. Then she leaned in closer. "And if you don't comply, I'll have you removed." Removed? From my own house. The disbelief hit hard. "Are you threatening me?" I asked. She straightened up and crossed her arms again. "I'm informing you," she said, "that harassment of HOA officials is grounds for arrest." The word arrest echoed in my head. For standing in my driveway, at my legally purchased home. I pulled out my phone. "I'm recording this," I said. Her face darkened instantly. "You don't have permission to record me," she snapped. "I don't need it," I replied. That's when she lost it. She pointed directly at me. "This neighborhood does not tolerate people like you," she said loudly, making sure nearby neighbors could hear. "And I will personally make sure you never live here." That's when doors started opening. Curtains shifted. People watched. She wanted an audience, and she wanted power. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that every word she said was digging her own grave. Because she wasn't enforcing rules. She was committing harassment. And very soon, she was going to find out exactly what happens when entitlement crosses the law. The moment she finished saying, "I'll personally make sure you never live here," I knew this wasn't going to end quietly. I looked around and noticed at least 4 neighbors openly watching now. One woman stood halfway out her front door. A man across the street pretended to water his lawn, but hadn't moved the hose in minutes. HOA Karen noticed them too. Her posture straightened. Her voice got louder. She wanted control and witnesses. "Everyone here knows the rules," she announced, turning slightly so the neighbors could hear. "We don't allow unauthorized residents." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Unauthorized?" I said. "I closed on this house 3 weeks ago." She scoffed. "Paperwork doesn't mean permission." That's when my wife stepped outside. She had been inside unpacking smaller boxes, unaware of what was happening. She looked from me, to the woman standing aggressively in our driveway. "What's going on?" she asked. HOA Karen's eyes locked onto her like a predator spotting fresh prey. "And who are you?" she demanded. "I'm his wife," my wife said cautiously. Karen's lips curled. "So you admit you're planning to move in illegally?" That word again. Illegally. My wife looked at me, confused and concerned. "What is she talking about?" I stepped forward. "She's claiming she has the authority to block us from moving in." Karen interrupted immediately. "I don't claim it," she snapped. "I have it." She turned to my wife. "Ma'am, you need to remove yourself from this property immediately before I escalate this to law enforcement." My wife's face drained of color. "You're threatening us?" she asked. Karen smiled. "I'm protecting the neighborhood." That's when something inside me snapped. "Enough," I said firmly. "You are harassing us." Her smile vanished. "You don't get to define harassment," she shot back. "I do." Then she pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the HOA legal team," she announced dramatically. She tapped at her screen, pacing in tight circles like she was preparing for a performance. While she pretended to talk, I turned to one of the neighbors who looked uncomfortable. "Do you know her?" I asked quietly. The man hesitated. "Yeah," he said under his breath. "She's intense." "Is she actually allowed to do this?" He shook his head. "No, she tried something similar with the family 2 houses down. Didn't work." That confirmation hit like gasoline on a fire. So this wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. Karen hung up her phone and pointed at the movers. "I've instructed the HOA to fine you if you continue unloading." One of the movers spoke up carefully. "Ma'am, we're just doing our job." She spun toward him, eyes blazing. "Then you're trespassing," she snapped. "And I'll have you arrested too." Now the movers were angry. "Sir," one of them said to me, "we've never seen anything like this." Karen raised her voice even louder. "I am giving you one final warning," she shouted. "Remove these people and vacate the premises." I pulled out my paperwork folder from my car. "This is the deed," I said, holding it up. "Recorded with the county." She didn't even look. "Forgery," she said instantly. The disbelief was unreal. "You didn't even read it," I said. "I don't need to," she replied. "I know when something's fake." That's when my wife started shaking, not from fear, but from anger. "You are unbelievable," she said. "Who do you think you are?" Karen stepped closer to her. "I think," she said slowly, "that you should be very careful how you speak to me. That crossed the line." I stepped between them. "Back up," I said. Her eyes widened. "Oh, so now you're threatening an HOA official?" she said loudly. "That's assault." I felt my heart pound. "I never touched you." "You don't have to," she said smugly. "Intent is enough." She turned back to her phone. "I'm calling the police," she declared. "I'm reporting harassment, trespassing, and intimidation." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "Go ahead," I said, "please." She paused for half a second. Then she dialed. "Hello?" she said sweetly. "Yes, I'm the HOA president at Maple Ridge. I have an aggressive individual refusing to leave a property he doesn't own." Every word was a lie. I held my phone up higher, making sure everything was recorded. She continued. "He's yelling, threatening, and interfering with HOA operations." She glanced at me with a satisfied smirk. "Yes, I feel unsafe." The neighbors murmured. One woman shook her head. Karen ended the call and folded her arms triumphantly. "There," she said. "They're on their way." My wife whispered, "What if they believe her?" I squeezed her hand. "They won't." But even I felt a flicker of doubt, because people like her were good at one thing, playing victim. 10 minutes passed. Karen stood proudly in the driveway like a guard blocking a gate. She even told the movers to sit down and wait for instructions. Then the sound of sirens grew closer. Her smile widened. 2 police cars pulled up, lights flashing. Neighbors stepped fully outside now. Karen rushed forward before I could say a word. "Officers," she said breathlessly. "Thank goodness you're here." She pointed at me. "That man forced his way into a private HOA property and is harassing me." One officer raised an eyebrow. "Sir?" he asked, turning to me. Before I could speak, Karen interrupted again. "He's lying if he says he owns the house. I already checked." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, let him speak." I took a breath. "This is my house," I said. "Here's the deed. She's been harassing us and threatening arrest." I handed over the paperwork. Karen scoffed loudly. "That's fake," she insisted. "I demand you remove him." The officer looked at the document carefully, then at the address, then at Karen. Ma'am, he said slowly, this document appears legitimate. Her smile faltered. That's impossible, she snapped. The HOA. The second officer stepped in. HOAs don't approve ownership, he said. They regulate appearance, not residency. Karen's face flushed red. You don't understand, she argued. I'm the president. That doesn't give you the right to threaten residents, the officer replied. Her voice rose. He harassed me. I raised my phone. I have everything recorded, I said. That's when Karen's confidence cracked. Her eyes flicked to the phone, then back to the officers. That recording is illegal, she said quickly. He didn't have my consent. The officer shook his head. This is a public space, he said. There's no expectation of privacy. The silence was heavy. Karen swallowed hard, and for the first time since she arrived, she looked scared. The moment the officer said, "There's no expectation of privacy," I saw it. That brief flash of panic in her eyes. HOA Karen tried to recover quickly, but it was obvious. She hadn't expected the situation to flip this fast. Well, she said stiffly, adjusting her posture. Even if he recorded me, that doesn't change the fact that he was aggressive. The officer turned to me. Sir, do you mind if we see the video? Not at all, I said. Karen stepped forward instantly. I object, she snapped. That footage is manipulated. The officer didn't even look at her. Sir, he repeated. I unlocked my phone and handed it over. As soon as the video started playing, the atmosphere changed. Karen's own voice echoed clearly through the speaker. No one moves into this community without my approval. The officer's eyebrows lifted slightly. The HOA owns this neighborhood. A couple of neighbors exchanged looks. Remove these people immediately or I'll have you arrested. Karen's face drained of color. She opened her mouth to speak, but the officer raised his hand. Let it play. The video continued, her finger pointing at my wife. You need to remove yourself from this property. My wife's voice, calm, controlled. You're threatening us? Karen's response, cold and smug. I'm protecting the neighborhood. The officer stopped the video. That's enough, he said. Karen exploded. This is taken out of context, she yelled. You don't know what he said before this. The second officer turned to her slowly. Ma'am, he said, we're listening to your words. She shook her head furiously. No, he provoked me. He intimidated me. He stepped toward me. I stepped between you and my wife, I said firmly. Karen spun toward me. You see, he admits it. The officer raised his voice slightly. Ma'am, stop. She froze. The neighbors were fully engaged now. The woman from 2 houses down stepped forward. Officer, she said nervously. She did the same thing to us when we moved in. Karen snapped her head around. You stay out of this. The officer turned to the neighbor. Ma'am, can you explain? The neighbor nodded. She told us we couldn't park our moving truck and threatened fines. She said she'd call the police. Karen shouted, That's a lie. Another neighbor stepped up. She tried to tow my car, he said. Claimed it violated HOA rules, even though it was in my driveway. Karen's voice cracked. They're ganging up on me. The officer held up his notepad. Ma'am, please lower your voice. She didn't. This neighborhood would fall apart without me, she yelled. I enforce the rules because no one else will. The officer looked at her carefully. Enforcing rules does not mean threatening arrest, he said, or misrepresenting your authority. Karen laughed nervously. So now I'm the criminal? The officer didn't laugh back. We're determining that. He turned to me again. Sir, did she ever tell you that you were required to leave your property? Yes, I said, multiple times. Did she claim she could have you arrested? Yes. Did she block your movers from unloading? Yes. Karen started pacing again. This is ridiculous, she muttered. You're all overreacting. The second officer spoke up. Ma'am, do you understand what harassment is? Karen scoffed. Of course I do. It's when someone repeatedly intimidates, threatens, or coerces another person without legal authority, he explained. The words hung in the air. Karen stopped pacing. You're not saying... We're saying your behavior meets that definition, he finished. Her face turned pale. That's impossible, she whispered. I'm the HOA president. The officer nodded. And that's exactly why this is serious. Karen's voice shook now. I was just doing my job. No, the officer said calmly. You were abusing a position. Karen looked around desperately. The neighbors avoided her eyes. Her power was gone. She tried one last angle. Arrest him, she demanded weakly. He disrespected me. The officer sighed. Ma'am, please place your hands behind your back. Time stopped. "What?" she said. "You are being detained for harassment and making false reports," he said. "This is outrageous!" she screamed. The neighbors gasped. My wife squeezed my hand. Karen backed away. "You can't do this. I run this HOA." The officer stepped forward. "Hands behind your back." She turned toward me, eyes burning. "This isn't over," she hissed. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound echoed like justice itself. Karen's scream broke the silence. "You'll regret this." As she was led toward the police car, she kept shouting, "This neighborhood will fall apart without me." The doors closed. The engine started. The sirens faded. And for the first time since we arrived, the driveway was quiet. But the fallout was just beginning. The police cars had barely disappeared down the street when the silence hit us. No shouting, no engines, no false authority. Just a quiet suburban street full of stunned neighbors who had just watched the most powerful person in their HOA get handcuffed in broad daylight. One of the movers let out a low whistle. "Well," he said, "that's a first." I exhaled slowly. My hands were still shaking, not from fear anymore, but from the adrenaline crash that comes after standing your ground. My wife leaned against me. "Are we really okay?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "She can't touch us now." I was wrong about one thing. She couldn't touch us anymore, but her mess was about to explode. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed. An email. Subject: Emergency HOA meeting. Mandatory attendance. I hadn't even officially moved in yet, and somehow I was already on the HOA mailing list. The email was brief and tense. "Due to recent events involving the HOA president, an emergency board meeting will be held tonight at 7 p.m. at the community clubhouse." Neighbors began talking in clusters. The man who had been watering his lawn earlier walked over. "About time," he muttered. "She's been out of control for years." "Why didn't anyone stop her?" I asked. He sighed. "Because she threatened everyone." That answer made my stomach sink. The clubhouse was packed that night. Standing room only. People I hadn't met yet nodded at me as I walked in. Some smiled, some looked relieved. At the front table sat 5 board members. Karen's chair was empty, and somehow that spoke louder than her presence ever had. The vice president cleared his throat. "We're here because what happened today cannot be ignored." A murmur rippled through the room. He continued, "The HOA does not have the authority to approve or deny home ownership. It never has." People shook their heads. "I'd like to formally state," he added, "that the actions taken by our former president were unauthorized." Former. That word landed hard. Applause broke out. The secretary stood next. "We've received multiple complaints over the years," she said carefully. "Threats, fines without justification, intimidation." One by one, neighbors stood. "She fined me for leaving my garage open," one said. "She threatened to tow my guests' cars," another added. "She told me I couldn't sell my house without her permission," someone else said. Every story stacked higher, every lie unraveled. Then the vice president turned to me. "Would you like to speak?" The room went quiet. I stood. "I didn't come here to fight the HOA," I said. "I just wanted to move into my home." People nodded. "I was told I didn't belong here, that I had no rights, that I could be arrested for standing in my own driveway." A few gasps. "I recorded it because I was scared," I continued, "and because something felt wrong." The vice president nodded slowly. "That recording may have saved this community," he said. More applause. A lawyer, clearly stressed, stood up next. "Due to the police report," he said, "the HOA is now under legal review." The room fell silent. "Any fines issued improperly may be refunded," he continued, "and any resident affected by harassment may have grounds for civil action." That's when panic replaced relief. People whispered. Someone asked, "What happens to her?" The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "Criminal charges for harassment and filing a false police report," he said. "Potential civil liability as well." A neighbor whispered, "She did this to herself." Just as the meeting was about to adjourn, the clubhouse door opened. A woman stepped in, well-dressed, calm, carrying a folder. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I represent the property management company." Every board member stiffened. "We've reviewed today's incident," she continued. "Effective immediately, we are terminating our contract with the current HOA leadership." The room erupted. She wasn't finished. "Additionally," she said, looking directly at the board, "we will be cooperating fully with law enforcement." The vice president swallowed. "Does that include Karen?" The woman nodded. "Especially Karen." The meeting ended in stunned silence. Outside, neighbors lingered, talking openly for the first time in years. As my wife and I walked home, she squeezed my hand. Do you think she realizes what she's lost? I thought about the look on Karen's face when the cuffs clicked shut. No, I said, people like her never do. But the story wasn't over, because entitlement doesn't disappear quietly. It fights back. 3 weeks later, the letter arrived, not from the HOA, not from the neighborhood, from the county courthouse. Notice to appear. Karen's name was printed clearly at the top, followed by a list of charges that made my chest feel heavy just reading them. Harassment, false reporting to law enforcement, abuse of authority. I didn't feel joy. I felt something quieter. Relief. The courtroom was cold and impersonal. Polished wood, muted colors, the quiet hum of fluorescent lights. Karen sat at the defense table. No sunglasses, no commanding voice, no audience she controlled. Her hair was disheveled, her posture slouched. She didn't look powerful. She looked small. When she noticed us enter, her eyes narrowed, not with confidence, but bitterness. Like this was still somehow our fault. The judge entered. Everyone stood. And just like that, the illusion of authority she had built for herself was gone. The prosecutor played the video. Again. Karen's voice filled the courtroom, sharp, smug, unmistakable. No one moves into this community without my approval. The judge leaned forward. Karen shifted in her seat. I'll have you arrested. The judge frowned. By the time the video ended, the air in the room felt heavy. The prosecutor didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. This was not a misunderstanding, he said calmly. This was a pattern of intimidation. He called witnesses, neighbors, one after another. She threatened fines. She threatened towing. She threatened police. Each statement stripped away another layer of her defense. When Karen's attorney stood to speak, his voice lacked confidence. My client believed she was acting in the best interest of the community. The judge interrupted. Belief does not override the law. Karen's hands trembled. When Karen was finally allowed to speak, she stood slowly. I was only doing my job, she said, voice shaking. Someone had to maintain order. The judge stared at her. You are not law enforcement, he said. You are not above the law. She swallowed. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. The judge paused. Intent does not erase impact. Silence followed. Then the ruling. Karen was found guilty. She was ordered to complete mandatory anger management, pay fines and court fees, serve probation, permanently resign from any HOA leadership role. And then came the final blow. Any further contact with the plaintiffs, the judge said, looking directly at her, will result in jail time. Karen's face collapsed. She nodded numbly. The gavel struck. It was over. Life in the neighborhood changed almost overnight. The HOA was restructured. Rules were clarified. Transparency replaced fear. Neighbors waved. Kids rode bikes. The community finally felt like what it was supposed to be. One evening as I watered the lawn, the same neighbor from across the street walked over. You know, he said, people were scared of her for years. I nodded. All it took was someone standing their ground, he added. I thought about that. About how close we'd come to backing down just to keep the peace. Months later, I saw Karen one last time. At the grocery store. No one avoided her. No one confronted her. They simply ignored her. And that seemed to hurt her more than anything else ever had. She looked at me. I looked back. No words were exchanged. There was nothing left to say. I didn't win because I was louder. I didn't win because I was stronger. I won because I knew my rights, and I refused to surrender them to someone who mistook control for authority. Entitlement thrives in silence. But the moment it's exposed, it collapses.